Welcome to Books, Booze, and Murder. I'm Anna.
I'm Alexa.
We're two besties who love to read and have a fascination with true crime. We literally, I think, recorded last about a month ago.
Less than a month.
Where the fuck did that go?
I don't know. I don't know.
How have you been? In that time, I think I've sat down with you once to just talk.
Yes, and that was literally last weekend.
Yeah, because we're like, we need to word vomit just about life.
Uh-huh.
But how are you?
Busy. I'm extremely busy. Soccer season is almost over. I'm not going to say it can't come soon enough, but there's been a lot of drama this season.
Really?
We'll put it like that.
Is it with the players or...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, got it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like the adults are a problem, and then player drama. Like, I had to ride in an ambulance with one of my kiddos after the NAC game a couple weeks ago. Did I forget to tell you that?
You did not tell me that.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. So I didn't get home until 11:30 that night. My parents had to come and pick me up. It's fine. It's fine.
What day of the week was that?
A Wednesday.
And then you had to go and teach kindergarten the next day.
Huh? And I had to get an MRI the next day. And I couldn't get my earrings out. So the people at the place had to help me get my earrings out. And at one point, they were going to make me reschedule. I'm like, can we please try one more time?
Oh, my God.
That's fun. We were having a lot of fun.
Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my life hasn't been as chaotic as that. Because shortly after we recorded, went on vacation. And that's where I picked up this month's book. Because I was like, I don't have it yet. And technically I can go to the library, but I'm in a bookstore. I can't help myself.
I understand completely. This was a good book. I'm very excited to talk about this one.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, I went on vacation. That was desperately needed because I was like, I'm going to friggin' shoot my... I don't know. I just was... bleh.
Lose your ever-loving shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just started a new job, so... highly confidential shit is going to enter my life, and I'm going to be like, can't say this, can't say that, can't say this.
Uh-huh.
That's all right. The benefits in being part of a union for this are going to be worth it. So, I mean, I know you've been busy, but have you read any good books lately?
So, I just finished listening to The Covenant of Water, which has gained a lot of traction, I think, just recently. But if you know anything about that book, it is a giant book. Like, I listened to it, and it was over 30 hours of listening.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And I said this in our post today, but I don't feel like I got as much out of it as I should have, because I started listening to this, I think almost 2 months ago, if not closer to 3 months ago. And I just finished it yesterday.
Considering how busy you've been, I see it.
So, but like that was a good book, but it's one of those books where I'm like, I might just have to either buy or rent the physical copy of this book and read the actual book and take the time to read the book.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I read the first book in the Butcher and Blackbird series. Moving on to the next one. And I'm not going to talk about that one because we're going to cover that in a later episode.
It's good.
It's very interesting for sure. I'm like, oh.
Is that the worst where you're like, I wouldn't mind talking about it, but I can't?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously. It's like...
I still think it's impressive, though, that you were able to, like, get some reading done on top of just running around with the head shot, like your chicken with the head cut off. Like, just whack.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, I decided to take on extra things, and then I'm even more busy than I usually am, and...
I've been concerned about you, because I'm like...
You've been concerned about me every year around this time.
I do. I go, hey, you want to record? And she was like, yeah, but don't you have class? And I go, no, I don't. And she goes, oh, yeah, that's right.
You had to go back and forth with me at like 3 different times and be like, I teach this day and this day. We're recording on this day. tomorrow is not this day. And I was like, oh, that's right. I have another day off.
Yeah.
I'm not sad about this.
And that's just a day where we talk about books and true crime and get drunk. It's
yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I had a little bit of town time with vacation.
Good.
Because I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night.
How was it?
So I never would have picked this up on my own.
Oh.
But this was for another book club that I'm part of, the Walking one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like vampires and Hunger Games.
That's right. You were telling
combined.
me about that.
And it was actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed that. I read Leather and Lark, which is the second book for Butcher and Blackbird. And then I read A Court of Frost and Starlight, which I'm going to count that as book 4 in the ACOTAR series. Technically, it's like 3.5, but whatever. Yeah.
It's 4.
So that one is the thinnest of them all.
Yes.
And I actually enjoyed it the most. Like, it wasn't necessarily... The plot was a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, they were gearing up for winter solstice.
Oh, okay.
And it was funnier and more romantic than, like...
The other 3 have been.
So I've heard that the last book, which is the next book for me, is, like, the spiciest of them all. So that is definitely my goal, is to try to finish it before the end of the year. Obviously, I read this month's book.
Right.
And then I read Practical Magic, which is for another book club. So I'm not going to say too much about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you can definitely tell it was written in the 90s.
Yeah.
With, like, some of the terminology, I'm like, that's problematic today, and that's problematic. And I think, like, the biggest thing that I'll say is I think I liked the movie better than the book.
Wow.
Which is saying something.
That's rare that happens.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then I'm reading a book right now that I found at a bookstore. I'd, like, never heard of it before, but it's called Magic in the Air. And I mean, it had a witch's hat on it. So I was like, I have to. Yes. And, like, I'm not done reading it, but I was kind of disappointed. Oh. Like, I feel bad about saying that because it's a debut book for this author. But it, like, based on the description, it had so much potential. And it just fell flat. Like, like, you had said at one point, like, you really liked Nicholas Sparks.
At one point I did.
Yes.
When I was in high school, I was all about the Nicholas Sparks books, and it was just, so gooey and mushy and blah, blah, blah.
But it's like, you know how you're like, that is not realistic and that's not realistic?
Yes.
I've been saying that a lot lately in this book.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's fall-themed, witchy-themed, but I did look online, and a lot of people are like, the actual content was very interesting, but with how rushed it all felt. And that was the other thing that I really actually appreciated, is the main female character has cerebral palsy.
Oh, okay.
So it's like introducing a disability of sorts in, like, a main character, which I think is a really nice twist. So that part I definitely really appreciated and actually really enjoyed. And the romantic partner was like, I've never known someone with cerebral palsy. Like, would you mind telling me more? So it's just like, okay, I like that. So that's the book I'm finishing up now.
Okay, cool. I like it.
But yeah, let's do this month's book.
All right. This book, The Lost Apothecary. Yeah. Do I read the back again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just remember to slow your roll, because we know you like to read fast.
I read fast, I'm sorry. I don't like the sound of my voice either, so there's that. So this is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. A forgotten history, a secret network of women, a legacy of poison and revenge. Welcome to The Lost Apothecary. In 18th century London, women whisper of a hidden apothecary shop and its mysterious owner, Nella, who sells well-disguised poisons to use against the oppressive men in their lives. Nella's dark world is no place for her newest patron, a precocious 12-year-old named Eliza Fanning, but their unexpected bond sparks a string of consequences that echoes through the centuries. 200 years later, aspiring historian Caroline Parswell is running from her own demons when she discovers a clue to London's long unsolved apothecary murders. Caroline's upended present soon collides with an explosive history, binding her fate to Nella's and Eliza's in a stunning twist that transcends the barrier of time. So, that was the back of the book. Now, I'm going to read my little synopsis of it because that does a very good job, but I'm going to give it a little bit more of a deep dive. So remember, I'm going to spoil things.
Yep, this is spoilers. That's what each episode is.
Mm-hmm. So this story is one that jumps back and forth in time and tells two different stories with a connection. We start with Caroline in present day, who just realized on her 10th wedding anniversary that her husband is cheating on her. They were supposed to go to London for their anniversary, begrudgingly on his part. Caroline is a woman who has a history major in college and wanted to do some sort of research with it. But when she went to apply for her doctorate at Cambridge, her then boyfriend, now husband, proposed, and she threw her application away. Because of this, she works at her family's farm in the office and thinks and almost convinces herself that she is happy with her life. Her husband is a successful lawyer, but doesn't want to have kids because he's trying to make partner at his firm. He's too busy. Any excuse he can literally possibly find. So when Caroline finds out he is cheating, she decides to go to London by herself and tells him not to follow her. Understandably so. So she's feeling sorry for herself. She hasn't told anyone about her crumbling marriage and runs into a group in London that goes digging through the mud looking for ancient artifacts that they can dig up with their hands. Which I thought that this was very interesting. I don't know how true this is, but they literally are not allowed to use anything but their hands to do all of this. She ends up finding a vial with an etching out of an animal on it and decides she wants to find out more about it. So she heads to the local library to find out more info. This is a good place to bring in Nella and Eliza. Nella is an apothecary in 18th century London, but she's a special kind of apothecary. Nella sells poisons to women who are trying to get rid of their husbands for whatever reason, whether it be abuse or neglect or anything else. And she is only known by word of mouth, and her shop is perfectly hidden from any prying eyes. Her first customer we encounter is Eliza, who is 12, and there on behalf of her mistress, who needs something to offer husband. Eliza picks it up, prepares the poison for him, serves him, and the man dies shortly after. Eliza also just happens to get her period shortly after and believes that it's her master's ghost come back to haunt her. Her mistress goes away to the country and insists that Eliza go and visit her family, but instead Eliza goes back to Nella's and insists on being her apprentice, thinking that she can find a potion to help her get rid of the master's spirit. Which actually was very interesting because Nella takes to Eliza very fast and and of course Nella is struggling from, it doesn't say it out loud and it doesn't say it in our present terms, but it's almost rheumatoid arthritis is what it sounds like, where her bones and her joints just kind of creak and ache all the time, and she can't hold a pen anymore.
Yeah.
So Eliza's only job, really, well, not her first job, but one of the jobs is to go into Nella's ledger and kind of rewrite some of the names that have started to fade away, because Nella is pretty on top of her ledger. She's like, this is the only record of these women and what they've done. So I'm going to keep it safe and I'm going to keep this history. The next customer is a wealthy woman whose husband is having an affair with his cousin, which is not abnormal in that time period.
Yeah.
Nella goes about her business and prepares a poison made of a special type of beetle. Eliza tags along and helps collect the beetles in the dead of night with the chill of a winter day. We realize rather quickly that Nella is suffering from the hardening of joints, making it more and more painful for Nella to bend and grind like she used to. As the lady comes for her potion the following day, Nella is taking notes, as she does with each of her customers, and the lady divulges that the poison is not for her husband, as what Nella thought, but her husband's mistress. This is like the one line that Nella will not cross, as this shop has always been a healing place for women, as her mother ran it, and even though the shop is now a place of death, she will not harm a woman. When she discovers this terrible truth, she throws the poison in the fireplace in front of the lady. Lady Clarence, then demands she make more or she will expose Nella and her shop. Nella feels she has no choice because she must protect herself and all the women that she has helped in her ledger. So her and Eliza go back to the field in the freezing cold, regather the beetles, and bring them back to the shop to remake the poison for this awful woman. Flashback to the present. Caroline finds a friend in the library named Gaynor, and they start searching through historical records for any apothecary that could have existed with the bear logo, that's what they figure it out is, it's a bear, etched into its jars. It takes a little more doing with requesting records from other libraries, and to complicate it more, her husband has been trying to call her. She keeps ignoring the calls, and he just left a voicemail saying he's on his way to London to try to fix their marriage. And I'm just like, dude, get a hint.
Yeah.
Get a fucking clue. It's like, no, you're not allowed to do that, actually. Of course, Caroline does not want to see him and tries to do a little research and detective work before he gets here because she does not want to share this with him. And it's actually really cool, the detective work they're able to figure out. Her and Gaynor, it's like they overlay all of the maps of the city that have been collected over the years. And it's finally like, oh, there's this weird little alleyway that's on this map from so many years ago, but it's not anywhere else. And of course, she wants to do all this work without him being there because he's just going to demean her work anyways. And that's kind of the gist that I got of it, is he was just kind of like, my job is more important than yours, which is just like,
fuck off.
Grand old fuck you. He'll say something demeaning like, it's not that important, why are you doing that, and other bullshit like that. While in the library, she finds a side road that is now an alley called Bear Alley. So she decides to go find it before a dummy gets in. Oh, and by the way, her period is late, so she thinks that she is pregnant, but now she's questioning whether or not she wants a child with her husband. Mm-hmm. As soon as he gets in, he insists on going out to a late lunch, early dinner, but keeps complaining about his jet lag and how tired he is and how he doesn't feel good and just wants to go to their hotel and forget this all happened. Caroline is less than inclined to do that, but humors him to keep the peace. By the end of the meal, neither of them have eaten much, neither of them are in a great mood, and they are not on the same page when it comes to their marriage. Mm. Caroline is leaning towards divorce, and her husband wants to forget it and just wants Caroline to forgive him. As James, her husband, isn't feeling well, Caroline suggests he use some of her essential oils to help with the congestion. So it sounds like he just had, and I've done that before, where it's like, oh yeah, essential oils, you put it on your neck, you put it on your chest, and it's just supposed to open things up without actually having to take anything. Yeah. Now let's go back to Nella and Eliza. The poison has been remade. Lady Clarence has picked it up and is planning to use it that evening at a dinner on Lord Clarence's mistress. Nella recovers from extra work, and Eliza is still trying to get rid of her master spirit, thinking that he is making her bleed. Eliza goes to a magic shop and finds a book of potions she can use to reverse bad luck. I think, at least. I think it was like reverse bad luck or gain good luck or something.
Bring good luck, yeah.
She takes this book back to Nella's shop and hopes that she can use some of Nella's supplies to make it. Over the course of everything they've already been through, they have gotten very close already. Nella starts telling Eliza the story of how the shop went from an apothecary to help women to a shop of poison that is hidden behind a wall of the original shop. It goes something like this. Nella was running her mother's apothecary when a man came in looking for a potion or healing element for his sister. He continued to come back. You're such a vocal turd.
Hi, Luke.
Excuse Luke.
Hey, no.
He continued to come for his sister. I was going to say, just ignore him.
Yep.
He continued to come back, and Nella and him grew close. Nella fell in love and gave herself to this man willingly. She realized that she was pregnant with his child, informed him, and shortly thereafter lost the child. She realized that one of her potions was missing a bigger portion of it. Because of her careful record keeping, and understood that she was poisoned by the man she thought she loved, because he was not looking for a potion for his sister, but for his wife. Uh-huh. Nella would never be able to have any children because of this man's carelessness with one of her potions that is meant to ease cramps, not cause severe cramping. Therefore, this man became her first victim of her new deadly shop of horrors. Nella attributes her crippling joints to the amount of poison she has made and rendered to others. But this piece of the story is important because something that was meant to be restorative or healing in small doses became lethal and damaging in a larger dose. Now, Eliza starts making her potion in Nella's shop, claiming she is going to apprentice with Nella, and in conversation realizes that her period is not something that comes from a spirit, but is a natural womanly transformation. In the meantime, Lady Clarence's plan has gone horribly wrong. The poison that was supposed to kill the mistress actually killed her husband, which was not the intended consequence. This becomes a bigger deal for many reasons. 1. Lord Clarence was a prominent figure in Old England. 2. One of Lady Clarence's maids saw her doing something sketchy that night. 3. The poison that was given to the lady was delivered in an old bottle of Nella's mother's that had an etching of a bear, which Nella hasn't used since she started administering poisons, not healing potions. Lady Clarence had attempted to hide the potion bottle before anyone saw it, but the maid was able to get an impression of it in clay and brought it to the police. Now, Eliza, being the smart girl that she is, decided to go to the lady's house pretending to be looking for a job to find out more about the situation. Lady Clarence warned her and Nella to run and get out. The police would find them soon. So Eliza runs back to the shop, finishes her potion to reverse bad luck, and tells Nella her plan to take this potion and hope that everything goes away. Like, I can do this, Nella. I can do this. Mm-hmm. Nella is ready to run and end her life by jumping in the River Seine in the middle of winter, but Eliza is convinced that her magic will work. Now, Caroline keeps getting leads and remembers why she loved her major to begin with. She finds the alley but there is not much else to go on. She keeps looking and realizes there's a wall and a gate. She climbs the wall and is able to get into the long abandoned shop and find the hiding spot behind the bookshelf. Her phone is about to die and the light is fading, so she decides to take pictures of the space, the ledger that is still sitting on the table from many years prior, and go back to the hotel where her husband, James, is and regroup tomorrow after she has more facts from the library. James and Caroline obviously sleep in different beds, and in the morning, Caroline wants to continue doing her own research and stays in bed while James goes out to get breakfast. Caroline looks at some of the pictures that she took in the alley and makes notes in her notebook, like how arsenic in very small quantities can be medicinal, and in large quantities can cause death, obviously, or quantities of non-poison to be lethal. Yeah. James comes back to the hotel rather quickly, claiming to be feeling much worse. Caroline decides to go to the library and see what her friend Gaynor came up with. There are a couple of documents that Gaynor has made copies of, so the original will not leave the library, and Caroline starts to read them when James calls her, saying that something is terribly wrong. Caroline takes the copies and makes her way to the hotel, where she finds James throwing up blood in the bathroom of the hotel room. Turns out, James admits to drinking the essential oil, not dabbing it on his neck like he was supposed to, and what Caroline had told him to do in prior encounters with all of this. Caroline calls the ambulance and they take James away for treatment. Caroline immediately becomes suspect number 1 because of her notes about the apothecary, the fact she caught him cheating, and that she told him to use the essential oil. Use it, not drink it. Yep. Now, back to Nella and Eliza as the police get closer to the shop. Nella and Eliza make a run for it, the police hot on their tail. They run as far and as fast as they can, and with a little help from a medicine, Nella is able to run faster than she ever has with no issues with her joints, and is able to convince the police that she is much younger than she appears, just by the way she runs. Yeah. They run to the river. Eliza drinks her potion, gives Nella the other, and jumps off the bridge. Nella is crushed, but it has fooled the police into thinking that Eliza was the murderous apothecary, and left Nella the opportunity to get away. Before they started running, Nella sealed up her apothecary so that no one could find it, along with her ledger and all the women she helped by administering poisons. Nella makes her way to the home of Eliza's mistress to tell her the bad news of Eliza's death. As she is dragging herself to the house, very painfully, she sees Eliza standing outside the house and cannot believe her eyes. The potion Eliza made had worked, but unfortunately, Nella's time expires as she comes to this realization. Now to end up with Caroline. Caroline is now being questioned by the police. James is in a partial coma, so he cannot verify Caroline's story that she did not poison him. Caroline has to call Gaynor and have her come to the police station to verify her story. Brand new friend and everything, slightly awkward. James does eventually wake up, clarifies that Caroline did not force him to take the essential oil. It was all a big misunderstanding, and the charges could be dropped. There leaves a little cliffhanger because James has used Caroline's essential oils before and knew to not ingest them. We are forced to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Did James do it on purpose to win Caroline back and fix, quote unquote, their marriage? Or did he really just forget and thought he was supposed to swallow the oil? We don't get a real clear answer. However, we do find out what happened with Nella and Eliza. Caroline finishes going through the documents, and there is the document about Lord Clarence's death, the assumption that there was a killer among them in England, and the report that the apothecary killer has jumped off the bridge. There's also a deathbed confession from Eliza, claiming to have not been the apothecary killer, but knew her. We also know that she married a boy from the magic shop that she went to originally, get the magic book, had a few kids, and lived a happy life. And Caroline decided to stay in London to pursue her doctorate with her new friend Gaynor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was wild.
Yeah.
And before we talk about it, we did upload on TikTok and Instagram, and we will get this caught up on YouTube as well. But you have some good stuff this month as far as the booze part goes. So you want to give us a rundown of that? Once you hydrate, you want to give us a little rundown of what you did?
My throat's very dry right now.
Yeah.
So I found a very cool potion shot recipe. So good on it's at Cocktails. So I'd give them a follow if I were you, because this was a fun one. I was like, I have to do it. But of course, it's not a full drink. It is just a shot, because it is 1.5 ounces of Empress gin. I did too. Sorry, not sorry.
That's why yours was fuller than mine.
No, both of them were the same, you jackwagon. You got two too, so shut the front door. God. And then 1.5 ounces of lemon juice.
Yep.
And then 3/4 to 1/2 ounce of simple syrup. And it's all mixed together. And then we have edible glitter, and it just looks so pretty. And then we'll chase it with our favorite cocktail of the year, which is our apple cider and caramel apple vodka. And of course, local apple cider is just that much better.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rolfs.
Yep. And I think, well, it's funny because back in August, as we know, stores bring in their Halloween stuff. So I was going through the home goods that's closest to us that's still a ways away. And I saw all these Halloween themed glasses, and I was like, yes! But I was, as everyone knows, I was about to move. So I was like, Alexa, here, hold on to this. And then you promptly forgot about them until today.
Quite literally. Like, I think they've been sitting in the same spot
for like 2 months.
And I keep looking at them being like I've looked at the bag many times being like, why do I have a Home Goods bag there? I haven't been to Home Goods. Oh, well.
So, yeah,
it's fine.
To see Alexa's face when she was unwrapping them. So we are drinking out of wine glasses that have like an inner orange layer, and the outside is black.
A matte black.
Yes,
it's
matte
very
black
pretty
with bats, and it's essentially
a graveyard scene.
It's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and then I got martini glasses, and then stemmed wine glasses. They aren't as fancy, but they still have the orange and black theme. And I was like, yes, please.
Oh, it's wonderful.
So, yeah. So, just shout out for you. That was amazing. I'm glad that you got inspiration, because this was fun.
That was fun. This was fun. This was like one of those, like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
I have to do this.
Timing is perfect.
Yes.
Okay. This book. So,
how do you feel about this book exactly?
I really loved Caroline's storyline. Like, I really loved it. The front of this book that I got has a sentence from NPR, and it says, "A poisonously good read. Surprises right up until the final paragraph." So you know what I thought was going to happen? The entire time I thought the two storylines were going to link, and like this was distant family of Caroline's.
That would have been funny.
And it didn't happen that way.
That would have been funny, though.
But to know that, like, we see essentially their ghosts as she's taking care of that, it was more of like, aw, like they're together. Like, I really enjoyed that.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. I really did enjoy, you brought up the whole mapping thing. And the fact, like, I thought it was amazing that the guy that was doing mudlarking, which I had never heard of.
Nope.
Had you?
Nope.
So the guy that did mudlarking sent her to the library, and it was his daughter that she worked with.
Yeah.
And their friendship, I'm like, I love this.
This is a brand new friendship. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, no, I loved it so much. I loved in the modern day having to go back to more olden times to compare maps. Like, I loved that. And then...
that was so much fun.
It was so good. I adored her. But then it was funny because I was reading the part where she broke into the apothecary, and she was like, shit, like, I'm going through my battery on my phone really fast because I'm using the flashlight. And I was like, well, that was stupid.
Yes.
I went on a walk
Mm-hmm.
with my dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think I'd need a flashlight.
Uh-huh.
But it is October in New York.
It's getting to be dark at 5:30.
6 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made that mistake where I was like, son of a bitch, I just made fun of what I'm doing right now. So, I really love how she was able to channel, like, her passion that she's put on the back burner for years and really connected the dots to figure out fact from fiction. And when I found out that Eliza took the potion and the way, like, she survived was it warmed her from the inside, I was like, what?
Yeah. That was cool. And I love how it switched in between Caroline's perspective, Nella's perspective, and Eliza's perspective. We saw all of it.
And, like, earlier this year, I know I had mentioned, like, I'm not really a fan of time hopping. I think I need to amend that to say, like, it has to be written in a certain way.
That's fair.
Like, you can weave it however way you want, but it has to be written in a certain way because that's what makes it great. And not every author can do that.
Right.
And Sarah Penner did it very well.
She did it well.
And I think it surprised me that, like, Nella and Eliza bonded and all of this happened so quickly.
Yeah, seriously, it was like Caroline's story and Nella and Eliza's story was within a couple of days.
Yeah.
Both storylines were just a couple of days.
Yeah.
It was like, oh.
Yeah, it was not very long.
No.
When James admitted to drinking the essential oils as a way to get her back, I was like, you motherfucker. You go home. You're a fucking loser. Girl,
it's like, up. And he didn't say it, but he said it in a way where it's like, you totally knew exactly what you were doing and drank it anyway. You're stupid because you could have died.
Yeah. And knowing he's the one that cheated on her.
Yeah. Oh, please, 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 please forgive me. Please forgive me. No, that's not the way it works, buddy.
Yeah. And I think, like, Caroline was like 34, right?
Yeah, mid-30s. And she's like, so she's ready to settle down, have a family. She's ready to do all those things because it's like, yeah, she has a job. She's very comfortable in it. And, like, what's the next step? We've been together for 10 years.
Yeah. Like, I think it was the perfect reminder of, like, even if you've been on a track that you think you need to be on, shit happens and it's never too late. I think that was such a good reminder and lesson.
And I thought the storyline of her wanting to go away to, like, grad school, doctorate school, that was painted in such a way where I thought that was a really good depiction of it because goodness knows we've gotten to the point where we do things for the guy because we think we have to, but it almost sounded like it was forced upon her as well. Like, in some ways, because it's like he knew she was going to Cambridge. He didn't want to lose her, so it was proposal. And then she felt the need to say yes, so she gave up on her dream. Now, it was her choice to still get married.
Yeah.
But it was like, I don't know. It just almost seemed manipulative and stupid.
Manipulative, I agree with, for sure. But I think it was so stereotypical, too. Like, this is what I should be doing. Like, okay, I'll put my dreams on hold. And when she broke free of that, I was like, yes!
Hallelujah.
It is really sad, though, that Eliza, like, there were motherly figures with the women that came in that wanted to make sure she was okay. But, like, I think I really took advantage of the fact that, like, I appreciated the fact that I had the conversation with my mom when I was younger about this is your period, this is typically how long it lasts, like, blah, blah, blah. And the fact that she never learned that because she was that young when she was brought to a better life. Ugh.
I mean, and then there is the fact that she was brought to this world of ye old England, London specifically, where she was able to have a better life. And her mistress, I think it was probably like Parkinson's or something, but her hand shook, so she couldn't write letters.
Yes.
And that was originally the main reason why Eliza was brought to her.
Yeah.
So that Eliza could write her letters, but Eliza was illiterate. So she gained an education from having this better life, but she didn't have she wasn't able to have the conversation with anyone of, this is your transition into womanhood.
Yeah.
This is nothing bad.
Yeah. Ugh. And then it did make me so happy that she was able to live a life. Like, it stinks that her husband, the boy in the bookshop, passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just feel like Eliza was so independent and strong-willed, and like, I guess taught the adults around her just all the lessons. Like, I don't know. I definitely really enjoyed this book for sure. I enjoyed the parallels. Like, it was good.
Yeah. It was fun. That was a fun one.
I was like, James, you can go fuck yourself. He sucks.
He sucked.
Good choice.
Oh,
yeah, because I had never heard of this book before you chose it. I was like, I don't, what?
Yes.
And the fact that she stayed there, I don't know. It just makes me want to go to England now.
Yes, for sure. Mm-hmm.
And Luke's over there like, my ears.
Well, if you'd let me clean your ears, we wouldn't have this problem. Keep shaking your head. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I definitely enjoyed it for sure. I thought it was really well structured. I liked it. Is this the only book she's written, or has she written others? I'm not familiar with this author.
I'm not really familiar with her either, but I am going to Google it right now because I can and figure it out, because I'm nearly positive she's written more books than this.
Yeah.
But what books? I don't know. Ooh, okay, so she's done the London Seance Society.
Ooh.
The Lost Apothecary.
Oh, did you know?
The Cloisters. Spitting. Oh, no, that's not hers. Why does it bring up when it does that? I'm so confused by that. Yeah. So I think she has 3 of them.
Okay. Did you know that there was a home... Hi, Luke. A home apothecary starter kit?
No.
Yeah, so after I finished this book, I texted you and I was like, oh, there's a drink idea.
Oh, yeah, I remember you saying that. I just could not get my shit together.
No,
Luke? Yeah, I see you.
So there's also recipes at the end of this book. So
Mm-hmm.
like, hi, Luke. He's like, there's food up there. I want it. And I'm saying, nope.
You're going to get your ass put outside, dog.
Yeah.
Anywho, I'm ignoring him.
Yeah, so there's recipes like to soothe the throat or otherwise ease a long day. We are back after chaos of Luke saying, I just want all the attention.
Oh my gosh, he's such a little attention whore. Anyway, back to this book, Apothecary Kit.
So at the very end of this book, like, well, first of all, she has a whole section of like essential oils and like how they can be used. And I was like, well, that's really cool. Because I think it's safe to say it's a relatively dying skill. There's a lot of people in this world who are very familiar with all of this, where this is common knowledge. But in my world, a lot of it's been lost. But yeah, so like there's a lot like mudlarking for beginners. I was like, say what?
That's hilarious.
But like Tom Pepper's hot brew to soothe the throat or otherwise ease a long day. So raw honey, scotch or bourbon, hot water, and 3 sprigs of fresh thyme.
Ooh.
Yeah. The one, there's another one, I mean, I won't go through all of these, but like a bunch of oils for, to subdue angry, itchy skin caused by insect bites.
Is tea tree oil in that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So castor oil, almond oil, tea tree oil, and lavender oil.
That makes sense.
Then she has a recipe for rosemary butter biscuit cookies, a traditional shortbread, savory yet sweet and in no way sinister.
Ooh.
But the one that I was like, ooh, if you like had the moment, which when I texted you, I had spaced on your schedule because you were in the car for 6.5 hours that day.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
So it was a Lady Clarence's Curious Cordial, which is 1 pound of fresh figs or 4 ounces of dried figs, 2 cups vodka or brandy, 1 cinnamon stick, and 3 whole cloves.
Ooh.
And basically you like prep everything and you seal in the refrigerator for 2 to 4 weeks.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So that's why I was like, you might want to start now if you do that. But this one's better. What you did was so
This was
better.
good.
Yeah, so I just thought this guide at the end of this version of the book was fantastic.
That's fun.
I don't know what well, actually, let me see when this is published.
Oh, and by the way,
Yes.
Sarah Penner has written only 2 books.
Okay.
And I think she's working on a 3rd one.
Got it. Okay. The first edition was published in 2021, and then this edition that I have here was published in 2022. So not that old. So cool.
Very cool. I like it.
Ready for me to fuck you up?
Oh, God. Always, right?
So this one was a bit of a nightmare.
Oh, geez.
Remember when we did It Starts With Us, It Ends With Us? I did Nikki Armando. And I was like, yeah, I had a bunch of information. And then I ran across a New Yorker article and my story went from like moderate to holy shit, this is long. Kind of the same thing happened.
Oh. Okay.
But this one was even more of a bitch because timelines and conflicting information was everywhere.
A very real reality.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that was like, that was the really hard part. So I'm trying to cover like everything that I've read, but I just wanted to start like put that out there from the start.
Right.
Conflicting information everywhere. Like the overall premise of what happens is still there. It's just the timeline.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, it was an article from the New Yorker called Professional Courtesy. It was written by James Stewart in November of 1997.
Okay.
I got information from an article from the National Library of Medicine. Murderpedia helped me a lot. An article from Columbus Monthly, a snippet from a podcast from Tyson Popplestone. I found that on YouTube, featuring investigator Bruce Sackman. An article from a local news station to the area like that's going to be covered, KHQA, and then a CBS article.
Okay.
So with that said, I'm covering James Michael Swango. Sorry. I said Swango up until 3 hours ago.
Oh.
Yeah, because I listened, I also listened to an episode of And That's Why We Drank. But keep in mind, that episode was back in like 2021. No. This was, I lied, late 2019.
Okay.
So it's a little bit older for them.
Okay.
But yeah, so James Michael Swango, or Michael Swango is what he's going after. He was a doctor who poisoned his patients.
How fitting.
Oh, serial killer.
Okay.
Yeah.
How fitting here.
Yeah,
Okay.
I tried looking up like female naturopaths, but like, and there were some crimes for sure.
Just
but
not
I was,
enough.
yeah. But I mean, technically it could be enough or something like this. But this is a serial killer I'd never heard of.
Interesting. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Oh.
Let's hear it.
You just wait.
Oh,
Okay.
buddy.
So he was born in Fort Lewis, which is southwest of Tacoma, Washington. And that's like the first thing was everything said Tacoma, Washington. But then when I read the New Yorker article, like Fort Lewis, it's literally not that far from Tacoma. So I think that's why everyone says that.
Got it. And probably everyone knows the one, but not the other. So
Yeah.
it just makes it easier to say the one.
Yeah.
Right.
So he was born on October 21st, 1954. Okay. And as of the recording of this episode, it's not that far away from where we are now.
Nope.
So he was a Libra. Fun fact. His mom was a housewife and his dad was a military officer. And that was another thing that was fucking conflicting was it was like shortly after his birth he moved. Well, they were a military family. They moved around quite a bit.
Right.
So after years of moving around from one base to another, they settled in Quincy, Illinois in 1967.
Okay.
So that's essentially a home base for him. His father was a Vietnam veteran for years. was in Vietnam, for years during his childhood. And eventually, unfortunately, in 1975, he started drinking a lot before passing away in 1982. And it's said that during his childhood, Swango glorified his father's Vietnam exploits, but it was at heart like a mama's boy. And like that'll kind of come into play later.
Okay.
So he was super smart. He went to Notre Dame High School, and he was a class officer who served on the student council, school paper, and yearbook staff.
Awesome.
His music teacher described him as a brilliant musician. He was a clarinet player.
Okay.
And when he graduated from high school in 1972, he was valedictorian and had received a scholarship in music to a private college in Decatur, Illinois.
Wow.
So this guy's not stupid.
He's not dumb.
No. For the first 2 years, he did really well, but then his girlfriend dumped him.
Oh.
And he quickly became an outcast and a recluse and had a negative outlook on life. So what does he do? He quits school and he goes into the Marines, which is typically like, whatever.
Okay.
Like, you do you.
Sure.
He did well in the service and received an honorable discharge in 1976. He then went back to Quincy to go to college at what is now known as Quincy University. And when he graduated in 1979, he had a near perfect average of 3.89.
Wow.
And then fun fact, or random fact, his time in the Marines inspired him to make fitness a major part of his life. Push-ups were a form of self-punishment
Okay.
when his professors criticized him.
Okay.
So imagine us, like our professors are like, this isn't the greatest. He would do push-ups in result of that to punish himself. I'm like, what the fuck?
Okay.
He was also
Understood.
known for jogging or calisthenics. So that's just the random fact. He graduated summa cum laude from Quincy University and decided to go into med school at the Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. And aside from some disturbing signs in childhood that I think were ignored, I'll mention that a little bit later, this is where it all went downhill.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So at med school, and I'm going to abbreviate Southern Illinois University to SIU.
Okay.
Things started off quite well. He had won the American Chemical Society Award, which is a program that's designed to encourage the advancement of chemistry in all its branches to support research in chemical science and industry to promote careers of chemists. And yes, I did copy and paste that from the website.
That is okay. That is okay.
However, he began to display troubling behavior and became known as a gunner. Someone who would do anything to get ahead. And while this next part doesn't sound troubling right now, I'll come back to the context to show why it is. His work became sloppy, and the assumption for that was he preferred to work his part-time paramedic job. Of course, all of this caught up to him because he became known as 00 Swango, licensed to kill.
Oh, God.
Because,
Oh, no.
yeah, and this was because of all the times that his report stated that his patients were doing well, but they'd soon die or have severe problems after that.
Oh.
So, this was the part where I was like, wait a second, I want to know what exactly happened. Like, what built this reputation? And a lot of sources. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I loved the New Yorker article, because it literally went into detail. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's fucked up. So, to be specific, 5 patients under his care died mysteriously. What caught up to him was the fact that he failed to complete his required OBGYN course during his 3rd year. So he did all this shit, but it was, nope, you didn't look at ladies' pooches. Like, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Because of this, a student-faculty committee got together to review his file. A fellow resident brought up how Swango had prepared a report on a patient but never actually examined them.
Oh.
And of course, Swango denied doing this, and when a faculty member got that patient's chart, they saw that there was not actually an entry there where it should have been. So, hello, evidence right there, cutting corners.
Woof.
And I, couldn't find exactly, why he didn't do this. I don't know. As far as I know, he was, that's probably what it was.
Yeah.
So I had mentioned before that I had watched an interview on YouTube from Tyson Popplestone's thing. And also, I was trying to find another interview, a particular interview featuring Swango. And this guy that he talked to, the investigator, he's clearly made his rounds. So it's like, oh, I recognize that face.
Oh.
But when he was introducing him, so Bruce Sackman, for 25 years, was a special agent in charge of the VA Inspector General's office. He's an investigator, former federal agent, and an author who specialized in hunting medical serial killers. And I was like, okay, what he says has some weight.
Wow.
In this interview, he said that students tried reporting Swango to the dean, but because they thought that he was harming patients. Mm-hmm. But the dean gaslit them and said he wasn't harming patients intentionally. He simply needed more training.
Oh, God. I hate so much.
Oh, just wait. Despite being a month away from graduation, the faculty member that reviewed his file wanted Swango to be dismissed from the program. Mm-hmm. However, doing so required a 100% vote, and one committee member did not vote for this. One member voted to give him another chance, and this doctor told the reporter from the New Yorker, "I was raised in a large family. I believed in fair play."
That's not fair play.
No. After the fact, he would go on to say, "To be honest, I feel very bad I was one of his defenders.
Good.
I was wrong about him.
Good.
I was duped."
Uh-huh. You were duped?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Let's go with you were duped.
Uh-huh.
Stupid mother trucker.
The result of all of this is that Swango had to spend an additional 9 months in the program, which would give him the time to repeat the OB/GYN rotation. Mm-hmm. And he would go on to graduate in 1983. Mm-hmm. And, this was conflicting information, so I want to try to, have all my bases covered as usual. Mm-hmm. Upon graduation, he was accepted into a surgical internship at Ohio State University in 1983. Wow. This would be followed by a residency in neurosurgery, and this was set to be a 5-year appointment. And that was the thing; it's how long it would be was the conflicting information.
Okay,
and it was conditional on a satisfactory completion of his first year internship in general surgery.
Okay,
so I just wanted to toss that in there. At Ohio State University, nurses started to realize that patients were dying mysteriously. And each time it happened, guess who the floor intern was?
Mother trucker here.
Yep. Nurses reported their concerns to the administration, but again, promptly gaslit.
Oh.
He was cleared by an internal investigation in 1984, but his work had been so poor that OSU issued him a letter saying that his appointment was being terminated at the end of the year and no reason for that was given.
Interesting.
Upon receiving this letter, he decided to return to Quincy as he knew he could find temporary work as a paramedic at the Adams County Ambulance Corps before he would apply for a license to practice medicine in Illinois.
Gotcha.
This is a pivotal time, so don't forget this. I'll come back to this. Turns out, management thought he would sue if he was fired, so this was their way of getting him out of Columbus.
Okay.
Of course, he didn't tell his family this bit of truth.
Right.
He told them he was moving because he didn't like the doctors there.
Uh-huh, sure. Doctors didn't like you.
Yeah. So, of course, the Adams County Ambulance Corps didn't do a background check on him.
Excuse me?
If they had,
I guess it's the 80s, so background checks are not so typical, but okay. Anyway, continue.
So if they had, they would have learned that he had been fired from another ambulance service for making, ready for it, a heart patient drive themselves to the hospital.
No? You don't know. No, heart patients don't drive themselves anywhere.
Yep. So, did Greg have, I know you guys weren't together when he was an EMT, but do you know if he had a background check for that at all?
Probably.
Yeah.
Most places have background checks nowadays, so it's
sure.
I'd be shocked if they didn't have a background check.
Yeah.
Tucker had to have a background check to work at K Jewelers. And Starbucks.
Uh-huh.
So...
yeah, most places
you have to have a background check for just about everything nowadays.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Oh, boy.
Woof.
I found an article from a local news station written in 2014 that featured some of his coworkers, and I thought it was fascinating. So one of his coworkers, Brent, said that he was one day introduced to his new partner, Dr. Michael Swango. He was struck by his charisma, which created a positive first impression. However, that wouldn't last long.
No.
One morning, Brent showed up for his shift, and he overheard the overnight paramedic crew talking about how they'd been called to a one-vehicle accident. When they arrived on scene, Swango was on top of the car, in plain clothing, taking pictures.
Somebody's a psychopath.
And you can guess who he was taking pictures of.
Oh, no.
Yep. The paramedics thought it was weird, but he was a doctor, so they were able to brush most of it off.
I'm sorry, you still don't take pictures, though. Like, you go into life-saving mode, not a taking pictures mode. Yeah. That's just dumb.
However, things got super wonky when Swango brought in donuts. Within 20 minutes of taking his first bite, Brent felt a turning sensation in his stomach. He soon started vomiting. In another article I found, he joked, "What did you do, Mike? Poison us?" And Swango's response was, "No, I didn't. You know I wouldn't do anything like that."
You full of shit.
He then took the box of donuts and left the room. Mm-hmm. Everyone who had eaten the donuts had to leave work early because they were so sick.
Yep, that's sketchy right then and there.
The night after this incident, Brent and Swango were on duty for a high school football game. Mm-hmm. Around halftime, Swango was like, "Hey, do you want some Coke?" Like Coca-Cola.
Right.
And Brent was like, "Sure." And Swango came back with a small cup of it, and Brent drank half of it before he started puking behind the ambulance at the end of the third quarter.
It'd be the last time I took anything from that dude. It's like, wait, the donut, now the cola? You shitting me?
Yep.
No.
That entire time, Swango seemed concerned and asked him detailed questions about how he was feeling. Mm-hmm. Again, Brent went home due to vomiting and severe headaches and stayed in bed for 3 days.
Oh, that sucks. That sucks.
Later that month, Swango told his coworkers on duty that he was going out to get some soda and asked if anyone would like some. Mm-hmm. One of them, Greg, said he'd like a Diet 7-Up. Which, fun fact, did you know when I was younger, I thought 7-Up was actually Zup?
Did not know that. Fun facts. I can totally see it, though.
Yeah. People are like, "What are you talking about?" I go, "This." They're like, 7-Up? I'm like, "Yeah, Zup."
It's Zup. It's a Z, right?
Yep. So when Swango returned... Oh, there's UPS. Hi, UPS. When Swango returned, he had 4 in hand, but went to the bathroom before handing them out. When Greg took his bottle, he noticed it had already been opened. He joked, "Did she go in the bathroom and whiz in mine?" He did pour about 1/4 of the soda over ice and was soon hit with nausea. It was the worst vomiting experience he'd ever had, and like the others, went home to recover.
Wow.
A few days later, Swango called him to know exactly what his symptoms were. Oh. And when Greg started to vocalize his suspicions, Swango hung up.
Oh! Mm-hmm.
2 other paramedics had a similar encounter. They went into the kitchen where there was always iced tea. Like, that was just their thing. But they'd noticed that it had become sweet. Neither of them had done it. Considering what had been happening to their coworkers, they dumped their glasses and started searching for sugar packets. None were to be found.
Oh.
Seeing what had happened, Swango dumped the entire thing of tea into the sink. He was like, "Oh shit, they know something." Later that day, when Swango was on ambulance run, the 2 saw that his duffel bag was open, and they saw a bag stamped George Keller and Sons. This is the name of a large lawn and garden store in the area. When they looked inside, they found 2 containers of ant killer in it.
Nope.
During this time period, the primary ingredient was essentially a concentrated sugar solution.
Okay.
One of the containers was...
Sweetness?
Yeah. So one of the containers was full, and one was empty. Yep.
I wonder how that happened. I'm curious.
And as you can guess, their paramedics started thinking about Swango's previous behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier in the summer, the news had been on, and there had been graphic footage from an incident where a gunman entered a McDonald's in California.
Mm-hmm.
That person killed 21 people, and Swango's reaction was to leap from his chair, turn up the volume, and say, "That's just great! I love it! I wish I could have been there to see it all. Every time I think of a good idea, someone beats me to it."
Oh.
Yeah. They also thought back to Swango's scrapbooking hobby.
He has a scrapbooking hobby.
Yep.
Of course he does.
He had quite a few of them.
Of course he did.
And what he would do was browse newspapers and magazines and cut out articles about violent deaths and poisonings and would paste them in his scrapbook.
Of course he would.
Now, keep in mind, like when I was listening to And That's Why We Drink, they were talking about how his mom, when he was younger, because this was the thing from childhood, would contribute to it.
Oh.
She done fucked up.
Mama, you have a problem too.
Oh, yeah.
There's a fine line between like supporting your child and being a psychopath with your child.
Well, and enabling them, for sure. So as we both know, when you work in a field that is dark, you get by with humor. Like, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So given this fact, this is why the paramedics didn't take Swango as seriously. However, he started crossing that line as they began to observe him more. A well-known serial killer, Henry Lee Lucas, was one day featured on the news, and Swango said, "Wouldn't that be great, to travel around the country killing people? Just moving on, killing some more? A great lifestyle."
That's just so sketchy. Like, no.
And then, this is dark. Then he goes, "The best thing about being a doctor would be to come out of the emergency room with a hard-on to tell some parents that their kid had just died from head trauma."
Oh. That's not dark humor anymore. That's psychopathic.
Yep.
Oh. Wow. You said those words out loud and nobody stopped you.
He then also had a sexual fantasy.
Of course he did.
And this is gross.
Oh,
Just
God.
brace yourself. You have no choice.
No shit.
It was a sexual fantasy about burying a hatchet in the back of a female's coworker's head to induce seizures. This is a sick motherfucker. Sick. Yeah. By this point, the paramedics had obviously had enough.
Thank God. Finally.
Yep. A new pot of iced tea with no sweetener was made. Their paramedic who made it left with a coworker to go on a call. When they got back, Swango was no longer there, as another paramedic had seen him racing away from the hospital in his car. The paramedics delivered a sample to a laboratory consultant at Blessing Hospital, where a test would reveal the presence of heavy metal, which was consistent with the presence of arsenic. So by this time, Swango had actually applied to be a deputy coroner.
Oh, God.
On October 26th, 1984, he was asked to stop by the Adams County Sheriff's Office, as the sheriff had implied that he was about to get the job. But instead of saying, "Congratulations, you've been chosen," Swango was arrested on allegations of aggravated battery and read his rights. And I don't know why he did this, but he granted permission for the police to search his apartment.
Because he thought they're not going to find anything.
Probably. Inside, they found a book with skull and crossbones on the cover, laying on a table surrounded by vials, needles, and bottles. Apparently, this particular book was popular with paramilitary enthusiasts, as it's a DIY on mayhem.
Okay.
It was focused on buying everything you need from your local grocery and garden store. In addition, an entire mini lab was set up where numerous chemicals, suspected poisons and poisonous compounds were found and taken in as evidence.
Okie dokie.
Now, I'm going to go into weapons. I'm not a weapons person.
Okay.
I don't know. So what I'm about to say, I don't even know what that is, and I don't care to give a shit. I don't care.
That's fine.
Weapons were also found and taken in, including a Mossberg 12-gauge pump shotgun with a combat shock and a Llama 357 Magnum revolver.
Wow.
Investigators then went to a local library where they discovered that Swango had checked out a nonfiction book about a doctor that murders his wife and a novel about poisoning a city's food supply.
Okay.
Of course, he posted bond and returned to the hospital.
Uh-huh.
And needless to say, paramedics were stunned. And Brent had this to say. We were right outside the hospital entrance to the ER. He walks up to us, and I'm just absolutely stunned. I cannot believe he's here. So he looks at us, walks right on by us, goes through both double doors, and proceeded to walk down a hallway that led him down another hallway. And at that point in time, I didn't know where he was going. But that hallway, to the end of that hallway, leads to the exterior doors. He walks outside, and we're standing there just trying to figure out, where is he at right now?
Mm-hmm.
And he was walking along the sidewalk, and now we could actually see him. He was on that sidewalk. Walked up to a telephone pole, then crossed his arms and kicked up his leg on the pole and just stared at us the entire time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. When trial began on April 22nd, 1985, he was facing 7 counts of aggravated battery, so it's a felony.
Mm-hmm.
He waived his right to a jury trial, so his fate was in the hands of Judge Cashman. And he's a friggin' hero in my book because he's still involved years later on this. Like, he's like, this is my mission to keep this
Make sure this guy stays away.
Yeah.
God bless him.
It was a circumstantial trial since no one actually saw him administer the poison. Poison. There we go.
We're drinking potion.
But the paramedics shared their stories of all that had happened. Forensic scientists testified about the reports showing arsenic was present in both the tea sample and hair samples taken from the paramedics who had eaten a donut and drank the tainted soda. Mm-hmm. An employee at the garden store also testified that he bought 6 bottles of ant killer. So it's like, you're done. You're done.
Good.
During the trial, Swango wore a suit and tie and conducted himself in a highly professional manner. He was like, I didn't do anything wrong.
He's smart enough to do that.
He took notes and often conferred with his lawyer, who was a public defender, who was once his high school teacher.
Oh.
His argument was that he bought the ant killer to combat ant infestations that he had dealt with at previous apartments and his own. One story he mentioned was when he returned from visiting his brother in Florida, there were ants all over his apartment and he'd called his attorney in to witness them. Of course, he was full of shit. As an exterminator came in, they were like, these ants aren't native to up here. They're native to Florida. And they're never found indoors.
So you put ants in your own apartment.
Yeah.
That's yucky. Mm-hmm. That's very yucky.
He ended up being found guilty on 6 of the 7 counts. And the judge said in an article, I don't think he intended to kill them. I think he wanted to take them to the edge of death. They were a lab experiment.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
So on August 23rd, 1985, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, the maximum term for battery. So all while this is going on, remember OSU? And I was like, remember this.
Yes.
Another investigation was going on to figure out what the fuck happened with that investigation. And they also discovered that Swango had a storage locker in Columbus. They're like, what? And they're able to secure a search warrant to go into it. And what they found was an M16 firearms clip and 200 rounds of blank machine gun ammunition. So it's like, what the fuck?
Okay.
In a report to the county prosecuting attorney, the lead investigator surmised that OSU's warning to Swango of his performance and unrenewed contract caused a violent reaction. The result was an increased number of mysterious deaths and near deaths. So he was just having a temper tantrum.
Yes, we have temper tantrums and we kill people, right?
Oh my God.
That's obviously the way that happens.
Yeah. So this is exactly what went on in detail. So I was like, what happened? 19-year-old Cynthia Ann McGee was a student when she'd gotten hit by a car driven by 17-year-old Scott Bone while riding her bike at the University of Illinois. Mm-hmm. She initially was unconscious, but by the time she arrived at the hospital, she was awake. Mm-hmm. She seemed to be aware of where she was and could even say a few words. Mm-hmm. Around this time, Swango had begun his 7-month rotation in the neurosurgery wing.
Mm-hmm.
At 11:30 that night, she had a fever of between 102 and 104. And he was asked to take a blood culture. By midnight, code blue sounded, and a nurse discovered she was pale, dusty, and bluish.
Ooh.
By the time the doctors arrived, she was unresponsive. Even though he was on the floor when this was going on, he didn't respond to this call. At the time of her death, an autopsy was done, and a cardiopulmonary arrest was the cause of death due to incipient pneumonia. The nurse on duty was surprised by this since she had seen no signs of pneumonia at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The 17-year-old that hit her was convicted of reckless homicide and sentenced to 30 months of probation and 1,000 hours of community service.
Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Another patient died 6 days after Cynthia. This was 21-year-old Richard DeLong. He was a car accident victim who was in a coma but had improved enough to come out of the ICU.
Mm-hmm.
He was breathing through a trach tube and had been comfortable when the respiratory therapist had checked in on him at 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
At 6 p.m., a group of doctors were making their rounds when he was found dead.
Wow.
Swango was the one to vocalize this before he got a hold of Richard's wife to notify her of his passing and that he had died of a heart attack. An autopsy was not performed, even though Richard's wife had requested one in writing. The coroner's office would later state that they did not have a record of this written request. So I think he did
something sketchy there.
Yeah. It wasn't until the investigation at OSU that an autopsy would be done, and they found a wad of surgical gauze in Robert's trachea. Needless to say, the cause of death was changed to homicide.
Uh-huh. Shocking.
Then comes 69-year-old Rena Cooper. She was admitted to the hospital for lower back pain, and she was given a room with a roommate. At 7 p.m. on the day all this happened, she was served dinner with some painkillers. Not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Between 8 and 9, doctors made their rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And Swango was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after 9, a nurse named Carolyn came into the room and saw Swango standing alone by Rena's bed with his back turned to the door. She'd tell investigators a year later, quote, it looked like he was putting something in her IV. I knew he was putting something in. You can tell.
Mm-hmm.
End quote. She left the room, but didn't go far when she heard bed rails rattling in the room, and the roommate started screaming. When Carolyn entered, the roommate told her that something was wrong as Rena was turning blue and wasn't breathing. And at this time, Swango's already left.
Right.
Carolyn did tell other hospital staff about what she saw, and as this was going down, another nurse saw Swango come from a room 4 doors away with a goofy look on his face. And she said, like a kid with his fingers in the cookie jar. Basically a shit-eating grin. The nurse went into that room that Swango had come out of and found a large syringe. Its plunger fully depressed, laying on the sink. I'm like, you're not even going to cover that shit up?
Nope, guess not.
She summoned another nurse who picked it up with a paper towel and wrapped it in another, and then put it in a case and gave it to the head nurse on the floor. The intent was to provide it to authorities if they came in. Going back to Rena's room, staff were able to revive her, but because she still had the tube in, she couldn't talk. But she was able to write down, someone came in and put something in my IV. The roommate filled in the rest by describing the person had blonde hair, but couldn't provide further information. Rena had said that she felt blackness in her left hand where the IV was and felt it go up her arm and then to the right side of her body. Yeah. When she realized she couldn't speak, she began to shake the bed railings to make noise and attract attention before she went unconscious. How terrifying is that?
Yeah, that's terrifying. No, thank you. No, thank you.
And, I'm trying to remember where I heard this from, but, I had this right in my notes, and I was like, wait, I can't cite this. Whatever. I heard somewhere that, he really enjoyed sitting, on a radiator watching their last moments.
Probably. Wouldn't surprise me.
No.
Psychopath.
Yep. During the internal investigation, Swango was asked by 3 doctors if he'd injected anything into Rena's IV. He, of course, said no, but offered excuses to each of them. Different ones. As far as the syringe goes, the head nurse threw it away as no one ended up questioning her. They figured that the investigation was over and it wasn't needed anymore.
Nope. That's nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
So the investigator in this case was pissed, obviously, by what had been done in the hospital. His conclusion was that they didn't want to know what the hell happened and they just wanted Swango out. I should also mention that when Rena was released from the hospital, she reviewed her discharge paperwork and they had gaslit her too.
Of course.
The report said, quote, the patient gave indication that she entertained some paranoid ideation regarding the cause of her respiratory arrest and felt that it may be due to unnamed person or persons. End quote.
No. Wow.
Upon the completion of OSU's investigation, Swango returned to his post. There were 2 other incidents that went down, but were not documented as well. One patient was named Evelyn, and she was recovering from colon surgery. And 45 minutes after Swango checked on her, another doctor that was involved, found her bleeding from many parts of her body, including her eyes and nose. This was consistent with someone being poisoned. Days later, another patient named Charlotte collapsed while using a bedside commode and was pronounced dead 45 minutes later when she was found.
Wow.
An autopsy was done, and doctors were shocked that she died from blood clots all through her body. This was consistent, obviously, with poisoning. After this, while finishing his surgery rotation in pediatrics at a children's hospital, he offered some extra spicy KFC to a group of doctors that were on duty. They ate it, and like the paramedics from earlier, became violently ill. At this point, we know that his appointment was not renewed, but he was able to continue practicing medicine. And the investigation that happened at OSU didn't end up going very far, as the prosecutor didn't get the cooperation from the university that he needed in order to make a case. They kept claiming patient care and we can't have police running around the hospital. It would upset the patients.
Stop it.
AKA they're afraid of lawsuits.
Stop it.
So needless to say, he couldn't prosecute. Behind bars, Swango refused to talk to Ohio investigators, nor would he talk to a psychiatrist. However, in 1986, he agreed to be interviewed on 2020. And that's the interview I was trying to find earlier. During that interview, he denied any wrongdoing and said he had been convicted in Quincy by tainted evidence. That judge that I mentioned earlier stated what happened at Ohio State is an absolute crime, apart from what Swango did. If handled appropriately, he never would have ended up in Quincy.
I'm sure.
Around 1989, with credit for time served and good behavior, he was released from prison.
Of course he was.
He had lost his license, when he was behind bars, to practice in Ohio and Illinois. So what does he do? He moves to Hampton, Virginia with his girlfriend, Rita. It was there that he applied unsuccessfully for a license to practice medicine. So he got work as a counselor at the State Career Development Center.
Awesome.
And it was and it was quickly discovered he'd turned a basement room into a bedroom where he'd hide out at night before he was officially forced to resign when someone caught him working on a scrapbook of disasters when working. And eventually he was fired in mid-1989 after 3 coworkers got violently ill. And police investigated, but of course, nothing came of it. Then he landed another job as a lab tech for, I think it's ATI Coal in Newport News, Virginia, and it's now called Vanguard Energy. So this is a location that tested samples of coal to be exported to France, obviously from the U.S. When he started, many workers came forward with persistent stomach pains. This included the president of the company, who had been admitted to the hospital because he felt dizzy, nauseated, weak, and sweaty.
Yummy.
The president at the time had no idea that Swango had a medical degree or that he had been moonlighting as a paramedic at a nearby hospital. Sound familiar? Another got so sick he was taken to the hospital room in a near coma. And at that time, they thought it was diabetes. After this, Swango legally changed his name to David Jackson Adams. And he started taking courses to be certified as an emergency medical technician. It's not clear to me if he did this while employed at Anti-Coal or if he was let go and had downtime, but that happened. On his applications for medical residencies, he included his given name since it had to match his medical school degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1991, the state's attorney's office in Quincy got a letter about Swango from the chief of medicine at a hospital in Wheeling, West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
He had applied to their residency program, and he'd also applied to work at a program in Iowa, but they rejected him.
Mm.
The letter stated that they wanted to be fair with Swango with potential employment, and they thought the severity of his punishment seemed out of proportion to the offense committed on his rap sheet. So here's what he did. You want to know what he did?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Tell me.
He forged a fact sheet from the Illinois Department of Corrections, changing the fact he had a felony to a misdemeanor for having a fist fight with a coworker that he'd served 6 months in prison for that.
Oh.
So.
That's inaccurate.
Yeah. So he knew he had to change it all to a misdemeanor in order to have any chance of getting a medical license. When the chief of medicine received a response, negotiations for the job obviously stopped.
Mm-hmm.
The hospital then forwarded copies of all the documents they've received from Swango to Quincy, which included the forged fact sheet. So they're like, you motherfucker.
No. Mm-hmm.
He also forged a letter called a Restoration of Civil Rights letter from the Virginia governor at the time that would restore Swango's right to vote and serve on a jury. The letter would say that he'd received word from friends and family that Swango has not committed further crimes and was leading an exemplary lifestyle.
I'm sure.
In late 1991, his relationship with Rita crumbled, and he met a young nurse named Kristen Kinney. They'd met during a class on advanced cardiac life support, and they got engaged in late spring of 1992.
Okay.
Very fast.
That was very fast.
Kristen's mother, Sharon, commented, "We all found him personable. I was quite happy for my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
He was good to her. There was nothing he wouldn't do."
Mm-hmm.
So next, let's head over. We're going to go around. This is what had me saying, what the fuck? We're going to go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Okay.
The head of the residency program received a letter from an applicant in Virginia. And to them, it seemed pretty legit.
Mm-hmm.
The applicant had completed a distinguished internship at Ohio State and was devoted to emergency medicine as a paramedic. It seemed a little strange that the applicant had not practiced for quite some time and had a conviction of battery after an incident was mentioned. His assumption was it was domestic violence, and to him that was a no-go, but he wanted to know what was going on.
Sure.
So they communicated with Swango, and Swango was called in for an interview.
Mm-hmm.
His charm was in full force, and he admitted to poisoning his fellow paramedics and how he'd gotten into a barroom brawl and felt his conviction was based on flawed evidence.
You admitted to poisoning your coworkers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the head of this department was like, okay, I still can't admit you because of, the guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And in response, again, Swango had his charm on. He explained that South Dakota was a state where if he showed that he'd turned his life around, he could be licensed to practice.
No.
So he underwent the lengthy hiring process.
No.
Including being interviewed by other doctors in the internal medicine department, and they all found him to be acceptable.
No.
Calls were still being made about his background.
No.
And he was hired on for his residency. Despite the calls, University of South Dakota had no idea about the deaths that were connected to him.
Mm-hmm.
By October 1982, he did get a bit cocky and decided to join the American Medical Association.
Mm-hmm.
As part of this process, they did a background check, and the judge who sentenced infamous judge, stepped in. And as a result, Swango withdrew his application because he knew the dirt that would be found.
Good choice.
So soon after this discovery, Kristen started experiencing violent migraines.
Oh, no.
In April of 1993, she left him to go back to Virginia. Soon after leaving, her migraines went away.
Shocking.
A little bit later, Swango came to her family's doorstep to convince her to come back with him, and she did.
Super.
Then, on Thanksgiving Day, the dean of University of South Dakota Medical School talked with the head of the residency program, and there were concerns. To make this even greater, 2 days later, Justice Files aired in South Dakota with that segment of Swango's interview from 2020.
Oh.
Needless to say, hospital staff started freaking out, and Swango was suspended and revoked from his pharmacy privileges.
Good choice.
The head of the residency program called Swango in, and he was accompanied by Kristen. So at this point, she's like, I'm standing by my man's side. Upon showing him the segment, he was like, what? I don't remember that. That didn't happen. What? No.
Oh.
And like the baby he hired a lawyer and appealed his dismissal. He even called a local newspaper claiming he had done nothing wrong.
Ah, yes. Sure.
But by this time, Kristen was shocked, obviously. She knew nothing about Swango's past, and despite this, she'd stood by his side, but they moved back to Virginia. Her mom and stepdad were really puzzled, and they were all told, like, it's a media hoax. Like, don't believe them. But Kristen's relationship was going downhill. Swango was not working, so she was supporting him and even let him money to pay his bills. At 26, that's how young she was. 26, her life was essentially flipped. Like, just...
Isn't he like 50-something?
No.
He wasn't born in 1956?
Hold on.
So he's like 40-something.
Yeah, 54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's 26.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. We're on the same page now, because woof.
Yeah. And, like, I read other stuff, like, only one source said this, but, like, woman to woman to woman, like, he was constantly involved in that.
Got it.
That's part of why I was confused about the OBGYN rotation thing. I was like, what? If you're into that, wouldn't you be a perv? Just saying.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So, did I mention the vomiting and headaches that started up again for her? Her mom, Sharon, thought it was stress. But things at one point had gotten so bad that she had been found on the street one night, naked and confused, and was placed in the psych hospital.
Oh. That's intense.
Yeah. On June 1st, 1993, Swango moved to Long Island without Kristen, as he'd been accepted into the residency program at Stony Brook.
Oh.
And then during this time, she'd stopped wearing her engagement ring. So some sources said that they continued to talk every day. Like, they were still going strong in a way. And then during their last conversation, Kristen learned he'd cleared out her checking account.
Oh.
And while this may have been the case, I think what is about to happen is a direct reflection of her physical condition. On July 15th, 1993, Kristen's body was found in Newport News, Virginia.
Oh.
She'd passed from a gunshot wound. Now, I've heard two different things. One was to the chest and one was to the head.
Okay.
Either way, she had taken her own life.
Oh.
And it appeared to be self-inflicted. She'd left a suicide note that had been found in her truck that said, "I'm finally at peace."
Oh, shit.
Yeah. That night, officers called her parents. I know,
Wow.
right? That night, officers called her parents down to the station to identify the body. And during routine questioning, her parents told them who she'd been seeing, and the officers were clearly like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. But they couldn't say anything. So, what do her parents do? They go to the library and they found an article where they learned about Swango being suspected of murders. And poisoning. Yeah. And then later, Sharon found Kristen's diary that she wrote in South Dakota. And this was one of her entries. "I was so sick, I was vomiting. I couldn't hold my head up. It hurt so bad." So needless to say, Mama Bear was pissed, and she was convinced that Swango had destroyed her daughter, and she was horrified that he was still practicing. So what does she do? She contacted Kristen's friend up in South Dakota, basically saying, like, hey, this is happening, this is where he is. And even though Kristen's body was cremated, a piece of her hair was tested, and they were able to confirm her system had been loaded up with arsenic.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, despite what the American Medical Association had found... Hey, buddy.
Welcome back, sir.
He lied his way into the psychiatric residency program at Stony Brook. That's how he got in.
Oh.
Yes, he convinced an entire board of psychiatrists that he should be in the program.
Oh.
And his first rotation was the internal medicine department at the VA Medical Center in Northport, New York.
Oh.
And wouldn't you know, his patients started to die.
Ah, go figure.
September 29th, 1993. 60-year-old Barron was checked into the VA Medical Center. He'd been generally in good health, but he needed some help with what he thought would be a brief course of treatment for pneumonia. When his wife came to visit him one day, she found a doctor by his bedside who introduced himself as Dr. Michael Kirk. She liked Dr. Kirk initially, but several days later... Oh, he's just jumping up trying to get food again. You're a turd.
My goodness gracious. Can you, lay down and relax, please?
So several days later, she found her husband's hand tied to the rails around his bed. The doctor explained that Baron had become agitated and had been given a sedative. On another visit, she found her husband's blinds to be lowered and closed, and Dr. Kirk was injecting a syringe into Baron's neck.
No, thank you.
When she asked what it was, Dr. Kirk told her, it's just vitamins.
Oh.
And when he left the room, a nurse came in, and Baron's wife mentioned the vitamin injection, and the nurse responded with, you must be mistaken. Doctors don't give injections at all. That's the nurse's job. The next day, Baron was found unconscious and on a respirator. Dr. Kirk had told Baron's wife that he would not be coming out of the coma and suggested that she agree to designate her husband as DNR. And obviously her suspicion and the doctor started to grow. And remember how Mama Bear Sharon was pissed?
Yep.
2 days after Baron went into a coma, the dean of Stony Brook's medical school got a call from South Dakota. The dean was briefed on Swango's dismissal, and the Stony Brook doctor said he'd look into it. And this is what he'd found. When Swango had enrolled, he changed his name to Michael Kirk.
Right.
This was done a month before he arrived. He was immediately suspended from patient care, but outside authorities were not alerted pending an internal investigation by the school and VA hospital. When the Stony Brook doctor called the doctor who had admitted Swango, that doctor admitted they didn't thoroughly check his background. They're like, wait, what? And this was mind-blowing as Swango had disclosed his felony on his application. On October 19th, he was fired and the local police were notified. Because the hospital was a VA hospital, the FBI was also brought in. He was clearly taking this seriously as he'd been traveling. Swango was taking it seriously as he'd been traveling around town and even enjoyed a going-away party thrown by a group of nurses. He may have even been dating one of them, despite his relationship with Kristen. However, when the police... Actually, this is another bit of conflicting information. Part of it said when police arrived at his dorm, he was gone. The investigator that was interviewed said that he was one of the agents that went to the dorm room, and he was there, but he wouldn't consent to letting them search the dorm. So I just want to put that out there. And I haven't forgotten about what happened to Baron. Unfortunately, he remained in a coma until he passed away a few weeks later. However, his wife had been filled in on Swango and identified Dr. Kirk as him.
Can we pause one more time?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yep. We're back. Alexa's husband was leaving, and she was like, oh, I need to let out my dog.
My dog needs to pee, and he won't go in the yard by himself because he's a baby.
Okay, so we left off where Baron's wife is pissed.
Yes.
And the hospital kept telling her, like, Swango didn't have anything to do with your husband's death. And basically they didn't give her an explanation on anything. But AKA they just didn't want a lawsuit.
Right.
His death was listed as cardiopulmonary failure secondary to encephalitis.
Oh.
The dean at Stony Brook and the head of the department were both forced to resign shortly after.
Good choice.
The dean, however, made a move before he left that I thought was brilliant. He learned about Swango's past and sent a warning about him to all 125 medical schools and 1,000 teaching schools across the nation.
Good for him.
Yeah. So AKA
That's awesome.
Yeah. AKA he was blackmailed in the US.
Yeah. Blacklisted.
Yes. Blacklisted. Thank you.
Got you.
This has taken up so much of my time. I'm so over it. I need to stop doing this to myself. I need to.
I agree. I wasn't going to tell you that, but...
So, not all sources listed this next location, but I want to cover it. As usual. He disappeared until mid-1994. And by this time, the FBI found him in Atlanta, Georgia.
Sure.
He was working as a chemist at a computer equipment company's wastewater facility. And they knew about his obsession, so they alerted the company and obtained a warrant charging Swango with using fraudulent credentials to gain entry to a VA hospital. Of course, the company he worked for fired him, and he fled. Again.
Good choice.
He went international. He went to Zimbabwe.
Oh.
Yep. So in 1994, using forged documents, he got a job at a Lutheran hospital. And as you can guess, he was well liked at first before his patients started mysteriously passing away.
Oh, I wonder why.
Five of them passed away, including, sadly, women, children, and pregnant women. Each one of them told nurses that they'd gotten injections from Dr. Mike. The complaints were yet again gaslit, and they were told that they're just hallucinations.
What is wrong with people? What the fuck is wrong with people gaslighting people? It's like, no, you can't do that. Yeah. No.
And he not only poisoned his patients, but he was renting a room from a widow in town, and after he cooked her a lovely meal, she became violently ill.
Yeah, shocking.
But she wasn't a dope and contacted a local surgeon who told her that her symptoms sounded like arsenic poisoning. But they couldn't be sure until they did a test of her hair, which she provided, and sure enough, there was arsenic in her system.
Uh-huh.
He was there for quite a while because obviously, like, the poisons couldn't be tracked back to him very quickly because autopsies and lack of resources. But they figured it out. And they weren't playing around, as at this point, upon the discovery, they'd contacted Interpol, and then they'd contacted the FBI, and alerted them of where Swango was. However, he escaped Zimbabwe before his trial date and fled to Zambia in 1996.
Wow. Okie dokie then.
So, in 1996, he worked in Zambia, and Nambia? Namibia?
Yeah, Nambia.
Okay. Before an opportunity came up to work in 1997 in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And though this is one of the parts where, again, that article really came in handy, because I'm like, okay, like, he has to fly south. Like, okay, I get it. Or whatever direction it was. But he had to go to the United States first. And I was like, how does that work? So while he was still in Africa, he tried to get a visa. And he tried to renew his passport as well to get into Saudi Arabia, but he was told he had to do it all in the U.S. So he got a ticket in Zambia to fly from Johannesburg or Joburg to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Portland, Oregon, where he was supposed to get a Saudi Arabian visa before flying there the same day.
Sure.
But upon landing in Chicago, officials ran his passport that had his name on it, and they ran a routine check. And as a result, he was arrested for making the fictitious statement about lying to the VA hospital on Long Island. Hello, felony. He ended up spending 3.5 years in prison for this. But investigators used that time to examine all the evidence and put a case against him.
Good.
At his hearing for fraud, the judge ordered him to not prepare or deliver food in the prison, nor be involved in any drugs.
Good choice.
Exactly.
Good choice.
Yeah. So this is when they worked on trying to gather everything they absolutely could. And this is when, as far as going to the cemeteries where his victims were buried.
Oh.
And exhume them. So, of course, they had to get permission from families, and they granted permission, and some actually even wanted to be present for the exhumation.
Fair.
And then that investigator from before, he was in the morgue as the autopsies were done, and on at least one of the victims, the pathologist told him that nothing was wrong with the victim's heart. They did not die of heart disease. Hello, toxicology.
Hi.
They made the determination on the top 6 cases that they could find that the patients were poisoned. And, like, this was one where I don't know exactly where this patient was, but it's still, like, holy shit. One patient was found to have been injected with a sedative that paralyzed them and caused them to lapse into a coma before passing away. So they literally couldn't do anything.
That's terrifying. No, thank you.
Yep. Less than a week before he was set to be released on July 11th, 2000, he was charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 count of assault. Zimbabwe wasn't fucking around either because they were going to charge him with poisoning 7 patients and killing 5.
Good.
He was informed, Swango was informed that even if he got away with his crimes in the U.S., due to an extradition treaty, they'd put him on a plane to Zimbabwe where he'd go on trial there. So it was like, we got you, motherfucker.
You're fucked.
So he did plead guilty, and he admitted to using paralytic to kill people and was sentenced to 3 life terms without parole.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. At his sentencing hearing, his diary was presented. He killed for the joy of watching and smelling death.
Okay.
He loved to read thrillers about doctors who thought they had the power of God. Let's see. And there wasn't really a good place to put this, but I thought it was important. During the interview with Bruce, he commented that he would love to, that Swango would love to call up, He would love to call up families and in great detail go over the family members' last 30 minutes on Earth. I was like, say what?
No.
Saying things like how they were in pain and they suffered and I tried to save them and yada, yada, yada. I was like, say what?
No.
Yeah. It was reported in something else that I heard that he sat, the radiator and watched the patient die. Right. And it just, I was like, you sicko. You sicko. You sicko. Mm-hmm. During this trial, the stepdaughter of one of the victims made a statement that the institutions in which the murders occurred should also be held accountable for. Just for all of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, they should, but I don't think they ever really did. So it's believed he killed up to 60 people and poisoned many more, but the number is still sketchy. Out there. He's currently incarcerated at ADX Florence, which is located in Fremont County, Colorado. It was constructed in 1994 and is quickly classified as a supermax, which is a more controlled level of custody than a typical maximum security prison. Mm-hmm. And it's unofficially known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies.
I like it. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, don't supermaxes only have you have 1 hour of free time during the day and then you have... Yep. You're in your cell for the rest of it.
Yeah, it's like the worst of the worst.
Good.
It's like...
Yes, it's bad.
It's awful. After his conviction, he went on trial again for an additional murder that happened 16 years prior.
Oh.
Remember Cynthia Ann McGee?
Yes.
As the prosecution was telling her this story, he sat there and made no sounds and showed uninterest in what was happening. Oh, we're almost done.
Oh, wonderful.
When he was asked to make his plea, he admitted his guilt. And all the charges against the student that, hit her were dropped. 16 years of thinking you killed someone only to find out you're innocent.
Oh, my gosh. How awful is that? How awful is
Especially when you're 17 when it happens.
Oh, my gosh. You're 17 years old. Your entire life is ahead of you. And all of a sudden, it's like, I killed someone. This is the thing that's going to define me for the rest of my life. And even as soon as you are... not convicted of it anymore, that's still going to follow you in one way or another. That's awful.
Mm-hmm. And the part that had me shaking my head just because it's poor timing, on the day of his sentencing, the courtroom was packed. Mm-hmm. This included a class of high school students who were there on a yearly courtroom field trip.
Oh, no.
And as you can guess, he was sentenced to life in prison with a chance of parole after 20 years. But again... this essentially means nothing because he was already serving 3 consecutive life sentences. And that is my very long, I need to stop doing this to myself, story of Michael Swango.
Wow. You're thorough, that is for sure. Wow.
Well, it's the person in me that, a lot of my sources didn't say, well, okay, I don't need to know names, but what happened? Mm-hmm. And then I opened the cookie jar and I was like, oh, shit.
Okie dokie, we're doing this, all of it. There's no short version of this.
Yeah. But, oh my God.
Wow, he's a psycho.
Yeah.
He's definitely got some, serious psychopathic tendencies.
And I'm not going to lie, when he was younger, I could see why women were attracted to him because he wasn't awful looking. Mm-hmm. Now I'm just ew. But as a youngster, I'm like, I can see it. I can see the charm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I figured the poisoning's whole segment was perfect.
Yeah, I agree. that was a good little addition to the Lost Apothecary. Mm-hmm. Oh, goodness gracious.
All right, what do we have for November?
Very fitting. We are reading November 9th by Colleen Hoover, which, by the way, it's my 31st birthday.
Yep.
Hallelujah. I'll be in my 30s, not just 30, but it's fine. So November 9th by Colleen Hoover. Fallon meets Ben, an aspiring novelist, the day before her scheduled cross-country move. Their untimely attraction leads them to spend Fallon's last day in LA together, and her eventful life becomes the creative inspiration Ben has always sought for his novel. Over time, and amidst the various relationships and tribulations of their own separate lives, they continue to meet on the same date every year, until one day Fallon becomes unsure if Ben has been telling her the truth or fabricating a perfect reality for the sake of the ultimate plot twist. Can Ben's relationship with Fallon and simultaneously his novel be considered a love story if it ends in heartbreak?
Oh.
Dun, dun, dun. That was the Goodreads summary of it.
There you go. I haven't read this book yet, but I did request it from our local library. It's the library system. So. Interesting. Interesting.
I originally read this one on the way down to North Carolina in May when I went down for the funeral of my grandfather. That was the original time I read this. And then, of course, I remembered enough of it, so I had to borrow it again to be like, okay, I'm going to flip through. Okay, then this happened. Flip through. Okay, then this happened. Keep going. Okay.
Sounds about right.
It worked.
Sounds about right.
It worked. It's fine.
All right. Well, if you liked our crazy chaos, where can people find us?
Well, we can be found on YouTube and Spotify at Books, Booze, Murder. We can be found on Instagram at Books, Booze, Murder. And we can be found on TikTok at Books, Booze, Murder Pod.
Yeah. And until then, bye-bye.
Toodles.